So I think too many times we spend our young life like trying to make things fit instead of just like not worrying about if things need to fit and just staying honed in on what you're being called to do.
Welcome to Tune In, Discovering Your Authentic Self. Today, I have my dear friend Kristina Rich here with me. We are in her studio. What do you call this?
Sure, I like studio. This is my magical, mystical portal.
Yes. Yeah, she does some painting in here. Do you do yoga in here too?
I do all kinds of things in here. Yes, yoga, dance, lots of working out.
So Kristina and I met, I think it was, is it a year and a half ago or 2.5 years ago? I know it was May.
I don't know.
I'm thinking it was probably 2.5 years ago. I bet it was 2.5 years ago. Wow. So I went to a new yoga studio, and I had been going to a yoga studio consistently for 4 years. And I had just felt this calling of like slowing down. And I had been like, the yoga studio I went to was more about a working out yoga, and I wanted the mind spirit part of it. And so I switched studios for a couple of months, and I met Kristina the first day I went, and it was like instant connection. Like we both had been going through something similar at the time, and we shared about that. And yeah, just from there, that's when we first met.
Yeah, I remember that day too. I was new as well.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't a 5:30 a.m. class. It's like having a deep conversation at 5:30 in the morning.
That's fine.
Yeah. So I wanted to interview Kristina because to me, she is somebody definitely that is authentic to herself in every way. And I love that about her. And I just thought she would be a great person to have on here to explain how she got to where she was, because I'm sure it wasn't always like this.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Okay, as a little bit about me, like Nicole mentioned, I am a yoga teacher, and I have been teaching fitness, yoga, teaching in every capacity for a really long time. So transitioning from a more going harder for my fitness, going harder for my life, just really hardcore in the perfectionism of doing everything and being this perfect person, to kind of transitioning into a softer version of myself through yoga, and really finding a lot of avenues in there to explore myself creatively, which I feel like was something that I had lost for a long time, especially, having kids really young, raising a family, doing all the things, trying to be all the things for the family. I think that I let my creativity go to sleep for a little while. And it probably had been for longer than that, if I'm being real, And so I feel like over the last few years, specifically since transitioning more into that more healing side of my journey, I found a lot more avenues to play and be creative. That was kind of my goal, I guess.
What led you to that? When did you discover, or what made you discover that maybe that hardened part of you, or that like pushing through things wasn't working for you?
Well, there were a lot of pieces to that puzzle. One of them was just like chronic injury.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a phase. And then, and just kind of realizing that there were parts of relationships that I was like longing to be deeper. And there were parts of my own personal time that I was longing as well to have more meaning and to have more depth and to explore my own creativity more. I think that was it was always a thing in the back of my mind. I was like, why is it so serious? Yeah. Why is it so serious all the time? I have everything so like grinding, hustling, doing all of this. And, so I started to do a lot of working with a mentor mainly has been a really big eye-opener for my life, but tapping back into parts of myself that have been shut down for whatever reason, even as young and as far back as I could go, really bringing parts out of myself that I can now enjoy a more like, I guess you could call it individuated experience versus one that's more compartmentalized.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I noticed a transition in you since I met you 2.5 years ago, and just seeing how that creative side has come out, like obviously the studio, and because this is new, like over the last 2.5 years, right? In terms of like the painting part and everything. I don't remember you doing that when I met you.
No.
Yeah. So that's all new. And we'll get into that later, what she does with the painting and what she does with her workshops and things like that later. It's pretty neat. How did you find yoga?
I think I found yoga because I was injured and I was like, well, the solution must be to stretch. And so just to stretch, like to get more mobile. And so even then, because of like my pushing, hustling kind of lifestyle, yoga was still kind of sport mode to me, where it's like, how hard can I do this? I could be like, how deep can I get into that? I could be just a best at it too. Yeah. And so I feel like at first it was like this push to become really good at the poses, and over time I started, I think just maturing and realizing that doesn't feel good. That feels good to be soft, I guess.
And being willing to address those parts that come up during, like for me, they come up during the during yoga, and you're like, instead of shoving them down and just pushing through them, you're actually addressing them.
Advocating for myself and for my body instead of trying to push through the pain,
Yeah, that's the same exact way I did. It was 14 years ago, and I had my one of my last surgeries. I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this. This is what I do for a living. It's all that people, and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But I never really put two and two together as to why I was beating myself up in my body, essentially beating myself up. So, yeah. So, okay, fast forward. So how long ago was that you discovered it, that you started getting into it?
I think 2018 or 2019.
Oh, so kind of recently.
Yeah.
It's only been about 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah. And that's when I had a really great teacher, Leslie Pelkey. I don't think she's even teaching anymore. She is phenomenal and really was inspiring. And I think it's the same with most people. When you're introduced to something new and there's somebody that really starts to spark your interest in something and you really admire so much, and then it kind of is a natural magnetism.
Yeah.
And so she drew me in, like, I want to learn more from you. And so I took the yoga teacher training in 2020.
Okay.
And then I went on and continued in my education and just recently finished my 500 hour.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think that's something that you and I both had in common too, is that growth and expansion, like always trying to learn. And I mean, no matter who it is, no matter what it is, just trying to gather more information in order to assimilate into your body and who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us like how it's morphed? So like what, if you can, in your words.
Yeah. Okay. So how it's morphed is I started to get a lot deeper into analytical psychology and study Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and people like that who were really starting to, again, draw me in, that magnetism. And that I realized is my compass of the things that I'm interested is the direction I'm supposed to go. Like I've learned my passion is my purpose. Like I absolutely know that. And so I'm very attentive to the things that draw me in. And when something draws me in, instead of now like plowing through, it's more of like a gentle journey, a discovery. And so I play with it now. And it used to be about bringing in information. And it's kind of transitioned, especially more recently, from needing to bring in information into just sitting and being with my own subconscious and seeing what my own subconscious pulls out from that kind of genre or whatever it is that I'm working in, and realizing the reason why it feels so magnetizing to me is because I have a lot of that already inside of me. So I think now it's transitioning to more of a contemplation. Everything's very contemplative instead of more study, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And so now I know I've gone to a couple. Kristina does these workshops usually Friday nights.
First Friday,
where you want to explain what they're about, because I think you'll do a much better job. I will butcher it.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to realize what it was about, because I have these epiphany moments and I just get these ideas, and I have like hopped around with things that I do because I I feel like it gives me a scope of experience. But just one day I was up on the mountain and I knew I wanted to be involved in dance. Dance has been the biggest healing modality in my life, and it has helped me realize and have more downloads than any other tool or thing I have ever done. And so it started to become this really big passion of mine. And so dance is practice, And then ZenLife had asked me if I wanted to teach dance there. And I was like, sure, why not? I'll just try it. I had this funny experience actually where we were going to promo it. We were going to demo the dance class, and they were having an open house. And I was sitting out front and I was reading tarot cards, because that's also something I'm really passionate about doing, is anything with archetypes, imagery, symbolism. I'm in that stuff. I love it. So we were having the open house. I was reading cards. I knew at 12:35 I had to go in and teach a dance class. But I was so in the zone of reading cards that someone was like, hey, your dance class is in 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to stop what I was doing. And I went in the studio and I had a moment in the bathroom where I was like, okay, just going to ground. I'd never really taught any dance ever. No, you've been this guy's dance. Yeah, I have no idea. This is not choreography. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I know that I love to dance, and that's all I can really bring. So I remember just having that moment in the bathroom and thinking, nobody's probably going to really want to do your dance anyway, so it's probably just going to be a small group of us. Well, I walk in and the room is packed. Oh, shit, I didn't even know the sapista. No, it is packed full of people, and I was like, wow, I have no idea, even what song I'm going to play, okay, we're just going to let it rip. So I just went in there. What's up? I'm Kristina. Let's do this together. And so I went for it. And it was the greatest thing. And so that after that moment, when I had that, just that high, it's euphoric. There's nothing to be able to reach states of euphoria like that in community naturally is so it's life-changing. And I became just obsessed with it. So I knew I was going to continue teaching dance at ZenLife. That was just a thing. We're all just going to do First Fridays. Well, I was walking down a mountain and I mentioned I have a mentor and we do a lot of astrology, a lot of tarot, a lot of other different types of things that we work in. But I had this moment where it felt like, and this has happened a few times in my life, where it felt like I was literally seized and I have to stop, and this idea comes into my brain. And the way that ideas come into my brain creatively, I envision that they're codes that are coming in and they form an image. And I remember I was stunned, so stunned that a dry heave came out of my mouth. And I had the vision and I was
for the class.
Yeah, I was this is not just a dance class. This is an archetypal experience where we're going to run through every month, we're going to cover a different archetype of the tarot. And so I was okay, well, I told my mentor and I was this is my idea. And she's buckle up, girl. And so, your body, has you chill. Because when you sit down and commit yourself, I'm not just going to teach something. I have to experience it, right? Because it's more of an experience, and I'm not telling anybody about teaching anybody anything. Merely offering an invitation to get to know how this archetype plays around in your life, because they do. And when I opened up my first morning, when I sat down at my altar, light my candle, I put that Fool card up there. The Fool is the very first part of the journey. And I was okay, we're doing this journey, and there's 22 cards. So it's going to take almost 2 years. And every month, I kid you not, it is giving birth. I go through these emotional roller coasters. And I just get to these places where I'm even this month, I knew I was transitioning, and I'm oh my gosh, I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know if I could do it, because they end and then you're you've got a whole month to just get to know and be in this. It's very interesting when you start intentionally working with the mystical things. And so anyway, what I do is I take that archetype to the dance class. And play is a really big deal to me. I knew my intentions, number one, this has to be playful. I'm not if it's not play, it's not fun. If people aren't laughing, if people aren't able to let loose and be silly, I don't want to do it. And then the second part was, how do we really use this therapeutically and also feel these archetypes in our bodies so that we can go out and notice how they're interacting with us every day because they are. So anyways, it just like blew up and it keeps going deeper. And I'm like, how is this speeding up? It's so wild, but it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I got to witness it. I think it's probably been like 3 or 4 months ago that I went, but I felt like I didn't know what to expect. And, I have the doubts when I'm walking in, like, what are you doing? Like, you're a 52-year-old woman. What are you doing for that? Like, those are just stories. Like, oh yeah, you tell yourself. And like, I had been, it was during the summer and so it's actually longer than that. And Joe and I were taking a break. And so I remember kind of being in a little bit of a funky place, like, where is my life going? And like, what am I doing? And I remember getting there and just knowing that it was going to be a time that I could let loose. Like, I knew that about you because that's how your classes were. Like, sometimes it would just be you and I in the yoga class. Oh yeah. And you're like, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, do you want it to be a hard class? Do you want it to be whatever. And we would just kind of do that. So I knew it would be something where I could let loose. But it felt like I felt like a kid. I mean, that was the biggest thing that I could say when I went out of there. It was like, yeah, like just coming and just being able to forget everything in the world. And it was hard for me because I did have a lot of frustration based on what was going on in my life because I didn't understand what happened with us over the summer with the break that we went on. Like I still, at that point, I still didn't understand what was going on. Now there's a lot more clarity because we've been able to talk about it. But I just remember being in there for that, it was an hour and a half. Yeah, it'd be an hour and a half. And just being able to let go. And I thought that was so great because, how rare does that happen that we can forget the bills, forget the kids, forget the issues that come up, right? Just be with yourself. Be with yourself and then not care about what you look like, what you're doing. I mean, we were doing some funky dances and there's nobody that you have to, it's what you interpret as the dance. So that was the cool thing. And like, I did things on that floor that I never thought I would do, which I thought was so interesting too. And I didn't care if anybody was watching or looking or listening. And so, yeah, it was really neat.
Thank you.
Yeah, at least a neat experience. So as you were coming up with this, did you have any doubts? Did you have any obstacles that came up, any things, or you just felt like you just were walking into your purpose? So it just was pretty smooth.
I feel like I'm guided. Okay. So I notice if there's something that's in the way, it's always my own, thoughts trying to creep in. But when I release that and know that every time exactly what's supposed to happen always comes out. And so I think because it's been, 10 months now that I've been doing this. Wow. And so I feel the pattern of it. I know like of stages that I'm going to go through. And I trust that every time it's just going to be what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's not about me. It's literally the archetype has its own intention. And I feel like I'm just the filter that's able to kind of present it into reality. And then people are able to really interpret it and experience it with as deep as they want to. And I've been incorporating a lot more active imagination. That's like my big thing now is like, how do we like go on a journey with this archetype and experience it and visualize it and communicate with it? That's a big part of my own meditative practice I'm not on my own. I have a whole council of guides that I communicate with every day when it's like, here's the situation. What do we want to do here? And then the information just comes in. So there's no block. There's nothing in the way.
Gotcha. It's yourself. So I have a big heart for young women, like teenage girls, 20s, that are trying to forge their path forward and not having society's narratives and familial narratives and things like that. Do you have any advice that you would give somebody that's that age? So like you have a daughter that's age, your other daughter's 20, 22. So the same thing. So I have a 19-year-old daughter, all her friends. What advice would you give them on a journey to becoming authentic?
Ooh, such a good question. I just feel like let it rip, because when you let it rip and when you follow your passion, the things that are supposed to be there for you will be there, and the things that are meant to fall away will fall away. So I think too many times we spend our young life like trying to make things fit instead of just like not worrying about if things need to fit and just staying honed in on what you're being called to do.
Yeah.
And the quirkier it is, the more of yourself that you allow to come out, the more vitality and energy you're going to feel. And the more of that you're going to attract back into your life. And so to me, whenever I see my daughters, just going so deep into whatever it is they're passionate about and however weird it needs to look, that excites me. That excites me.
How blessed are they to have a mama that recognizes that in herself and also allows them to be that person. That's something that I strive to every day, and I don't always succeed, but being able to let my children be who they are and not try to put them in a box or not try to live out my own wounds and put onto them. And it's just constant awareness needed, and having people in your life that you can be accountable to when you start noticing that you're doing that. So your children are so blessed, and husband. Her husband's amazing. I hope to have them on here at some point. So thank you so much for your time. It was so great to be in here and to see you and spend time with you. And